They were supposed to be unstoppable. 4 Hall of Famers, 11 championship rings. They looked like a cheat code on paper. But what happens when ego, age, and animosity collide? You don't get dynasty, you get disaster. In the summer of 2003, the NBA was put on notice. The Los Angeles Lakers had just pulled off what looked like a heist. Already armed with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, 2 of the most dominant forces in basketball, they added 39-year-old Karl Malone and 35-year-old Gary Payton, both hungry for a ring. It was a super team before the word super team even entered pop culture. Malone was the second leading scorer in NBA history. Payton was a defensive genius and a floor general. Kobe was ascending into full-fledged superstardom. And Shaq, still the most dominant big man on earth. The media anointed them champions before the season even tipped off. And on paper, they should have been. But this team wasn't built for chemistry. It was built for headlines. Right from the jump, the 04 Lakers weren't smooth sailing. Gary Payton clashed with Phil Jackson's triangle offensive. He hated the system and looked lost in it. Karl Malone started strong but tore his MCL midway through the season. Meanwhile, Kobe Bryant was battling more than just defenders. He was flying back and forth between games and courtrooms, fighting a criminal assault case in Colorado. And then there was the Shaq-Kobe feud. It had always been bubbling, but in 2004 it boiled over. Shaq wanted a contract extension. Kobe didn't think he deserved one. Kobe was trying to take over the team. Shaq didn't want to give it up. They weren't teammates anymore. They were rivals wearing the same jersey. Despite it all, the Lakers made it to the NBA Finals. Everyone expected them to steamroll the Detroit Pistons, a blue-collar squad with no superstar. But Detroit didn't just beat them, they humiliated them. Chauncey Billups ran circles around Gary Payton. Ben Wallace neutralized Shaq. And the Pistons' defense turned Kobe's hero ball into bricklaying. LA lost in 5 games. It wasn't close. It wasn't competitive. It was a slow-motion car crash broadcast live to millions. And after the finals, the Dream Team imploded overnight. Phil Jackson quit. Shaq was traded to Miami. Karl Malone retired. Gary Payton got shipped out. And Kobe, he became the sole survivor of one of the most hyped flops in NBA history. They were supposed to be champions. Instead, they became a warning. That talent might win games, but egos, they lose everything. Imagine trading James Harden for a player who just stops playing. A guy once hailed as the next LeBron, reduced to a meme. This isn't a cautionary tale, it's a basketball ghost story. And it starts with a single trade that still haunts Brooklyn to this day. It was February 10th, 2022. The Brooklyn Nets, already in chaos with Kyrie Irving skipping games due to vaccine mandate, Kevin Durant carrying the team on one knee, shocked the league. They traded James Harden to Philly, and in return, they got Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and the enigma known as Ben Simmons. Now, on paper, Simmons was a defensive savant, a 6'10" playmaker with court vision that couldn't be taught. The Nets believed he'd be the perfect glue guy, a point forward who could guard anyone, and didn't need the ball to dominate. But there was one thing they didn't count on. He never actually played. To understand the collapse, you have to rewind. Game 7, 2021, Eastern Conference Semis. Ben Simmons, under the rim, wide open, and he passes the ball. The Sixers lose. The city turns on him overnight. That moment shattered him, and when he landed in Brooklyn, he wasn't just injured, he was psychologically fried. Every day was a new excuse. Back tightness, mental stress, setbacks, and rehab. The Nets publicly supported him at first. But behind the scenes, frustration boiled. When Simmons finally did suit up, he looked like a shell. No explosiveness, no aggression, no confidence. He passed up layups, bricked free throws, and played with the body of an all-star but the soul of a walk-on. At one point, he even fouled out with 0 points, and the internet absolutely torched him. Tweets like, Ben Simmons is playing like he got paid in V-Bucks. Dude moving like a 2K MyPlayer with no badges. And worst of all, his teammates started giving up too. By 2024, the Nets had seen enough. KD was gone, Kyrie was gone, and Simmons still there, still not playing, still making $35 million a year. He went from cornerstone to caution tape. The guy they traded Harden for became the most expensive ghost in NBA history. They say pressure makes diamonds, but in Brooklyn, pressure made Simmons disappear. They had the #1 pick. They had a walking bucket. They had one of the toughest defenders in the league. On paper, a playoff threat. In reality, this wasn't a team, this was a time bomb, and Jimmy Butler had his finger on the detonator. In the summer of 2017, the Minnesota Timberwolves looked like a franchise finally ready to escape mediocrity. They had Karl Anthony Towns, arguably the most offensively gifted big man in the league. Andrew Wiggins, an athletic freak and former #1 overall pick. And then came the big move. They traded for Jimmy Butler, fresh off 3 All-Star appearances and ready to be the veteran anchor for a rising squad. They had talent, they had buzz, and for the first time in 14 years, they made the playoffs. But behind the scenes, it was pure chaos. You see, Butler wasn't just intense, he was obsessed with winning. But when he looked at KAT and Wiggins, he didn't see dogs, he saw puppies. Privately, he questioned their work ethic. Publicly, he kept it cool. Until the day everything blew up. In October 2018, Jimmy Butler walked into practice and destroyed everyone. Not metaphorically, literally. He took the third stringers, guys who barely touched the court, and ran the starters off the gym. At one point, he screamed at GM Scott Layden, "You effing need me." And then he walked off the court like a villain exiting an explosion. Jimmy Butler didn't hate KAT or Wiggins personally, he hated what they represented, entitlement without accountability. Butler came from Tom Thibodeau's blood and sweat culture. Towns and Wiggins, they came up as golden boys, never needing to fight for their spots. This wasn't just a team chemistry issue, it was ideological warfare, and it was unwinnable. They were supposed to be a big 3 for the future, instead they were a cautionary tale. Because you can stack talent all day, but if nobody wants to bleed for the jersey, it's only a matter of time before it all burns down. He had the look, he had the hype. He had $94 million in the bank, and yet somehow Chandler Parsons became the human definition of overpaid. This isn't just about injuries, this is the story of how NBA money met NBA nightlife and lost. In 2016, the Memphis Grizzlies made one of the most aggressive signings in franchise history, a 4-year, $94 million max deal for Chandler Parsons. This wasn't a reckless team, this was grit and grind Memphis. Defense, toughness, and blue-collar energy. But they were also desperate. They needed scoring, they needed spacing, and they thought Chandler Parsons was the missing piece. At the time, it kind of made sense. Parsons had a silky jumper, size at 6 foot 10 inches, and had flash star potential with the Rockets and Mavericks. But even then, there were warning signs. Parsons had just undergone a second knee surgery before hitting free agency, and the Mavericks, who had the inside scoop, didn't even try to re-sign him. That should have told everyone something, but Memphis ignored the signs, threw him a max, and announced it with champagne. Then reality hit. In year 1 of the deal, Parsons played 34 games. In year 2, 36 games. By year 3, he was basically benched indefinitely. Not for performance, not for another injury, but because the team literally didn't want to play him anymore. They called it recovery management. What it really was, an expensive ghosting. On the court, Parsons never averaged more than 7.9 points per game for Memphis. But off the court, oh, he was winning. Luxury cars, yacht parties, private jets with models. His Instagram looked more like Dan Bilzerian than a professional athlete. In fact, fans joked that Parsons was living out the NBA 2K My Career mode. Only he skipped the games and went straight to the endorsements and clubs. There were paparazzi photos with Kendall Jenner, a viral clip of him missing every single shot during pregame warm-ups. Even teammates reportedly grew frustrated, questioning his commitment and rehab effort. Then came 2019, his final year with Memphis. He was traded to the Hawks. played 5 games and quietly faded into NBA oblivion. Chandler Parsons didn't just fumble the bag. He secured it, never opened it, and then took it to the beach. Memphis paid for a star and got a vacationer. On paper, this team looked like a basketball cheat code. 4 future Hall of Famers, a 5-time champion, a 2-time MVP, a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and Pau freaking Gasol. But what happens when egos, injuries, and identity crises all check in at once? You don't get a super team, you get a super mess. It was the summer of 2012, and the Lakers had just pulled off what looked like a basketball miracle. Steve Nash signed on in a shocking move from Phoenix. Dwight Howard was traded to LA in a blockbuster 4-team deal. Add that to a core already boasting Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol, this was supposed to be a dynasty reboot. Hell, even Shaq said it was unfair. The expectations? NBA Finals or bust. The reality? A slow-motion car crash in purple and gold. Let's start with chemistry. There wasn't any. Dwight, who was nursing a back injury, clashed with Kobe early. Kobe wanted seriousness, grit, ruthlessness. Dwight was still trying to be fun, smiling through games and playing Superman. Let's just say Kobe wasn't a fan. Then came the injuries. Nash fractured his fibula 2 games into the season. Dwight wasn't at full strength. Pau had lingering knee issues. Even Kobe, despite playing lights out, was pushing through an unsustainable workload. By midseason, the Lakers were spiraling. Head coach Mike Brown got fired after 5 games. They replaced him with Mike D'Antoni, who ran an offense that didn't fit Dwight, Pau, or even Kobe. The locker room turned toxic. Reports leaked of Kobe and Dwight nearly coming to blows. And in a bizarre twist, Kobe publicly questioned Dwight's toughness multiple times. Yet somehow the Lakers clawed their way to a 7th seed. But right when they caught a flicker of momentum, Kobe tore his Achilles. Done for the season. Done, arguably, for good. In the playoffs, the Lakers got swept in the first round by the Spurs. Nash was a shell of himself. Dwight got ejected in his final game in a Lakers jersey. And that offseason, he bolted to Houston without so much as a thank you. The Lakers super team lasted 1 season, but the damage lasted for years. This wasn't just a failed experiment, it was a warning. You can buy star power, but you can't buy chemistry. And the 2012 Lakers proved that not every dream team wakes up from the nightmare.